we've now done close to 30 SPVs over the last 4.5 years, is we now call it our benevolent model or benevolent formula. If we don't get our investors a double on their investment, we don't make a nickel. And the idea behind that is we decided, look, everything that we're investing in, we're really looking for really outsized returns, 5 to 10x type return profiles. And we said, you know what, if we can't double the investor money, we really don't deserve to get paid. Now, when we've standardized on this, one thing to point out though is anything above a double, our formulas, we take 30%, the investors get 70%. Again, that's the portion above the double. So we like to say, yes, we do really well, but only after the investors have done well.
Hi, I'm Brian Wish, and welcome back to the One Away Show. Today's guest is Grant Johnson, a private equity investor, former media executive, and someone who's continually reinvented himself through bold choices and honest reflection. In this conversation, we unpack the importance of environment, character, and surrounding yourself with the right people. We explore his early lessons in grit and resilience, what he learned from media deal-making at the highest levels, and why investing, like life, is all about the long game. Grant brings quiet strength, sharp perspective, and a refreshing humility to everything he does. Let's get into it.
Grant, welcome to the One Away Show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Super excited to do this. I loved our first chat. So, Grant, what is the one away moment that you want to share with us today?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Brian. It would have to be about 4.5 years ago when my identical twin brother and partner, co-founder of Benevolent Capital, we were approached with the opportunity to invest in Oura Ring. So you can see on the screen here, I've got my Oura Ring right next to my wedding band. It looks really confusing. People think I have 2 Oura Rings. And my brother and I have been obsessive wearers and users of Oura since we can remember, however many years ago. And so when we had this opportunity to invest, we jumped all over it. We just said, yes, we're in. We love it. And just to give added perspective on how much we love Oura Ring, Brett lives in Los Angeles. I live in Chattanooga. We literally send every morning by text our sleep scores to each other. By the way, I rocked a 94 last night in sleep. That's a massive number. That's even with the daylight savings time change, which usually messes people up. But I really go after it. So we joked that as identical twins, my brother and I, we're competitive about who gets more sleep at this stage in our lives. And so that's why when we had a chance to invest, we just said, yes, we love it. And then they came back and they said, well, we've got more available if you're interested. And we said, well, let us reach out to our extended network. We're both members of Young Presidents Organization, IPO, and we'll see what kind of response we get. And that's what we did. We sent out an email saying, hey, we've got an opportunity to invest in a ring. Is anybody interested? And we got this incredible response. So as a result, we established effectively what we would call the private equity and venture arm of Benevolent Capital, where we established a single purpose vehicle, an FPV, exclusively focused on investing into Oura Ring. And that ultimately made us realize, like, okay, we're not going to charge management fees when people are investing into an exclusive SPV just for one opportunity. And then we looked at it and I just said to Brett, because he was like, wait, we're not? And I said, well, we're not Blackstone, we're not KKR, we're not supporting offices all over the world, which is typically why a fund needs to charge management fees. And then we standardized on this approach. It wasn't initially on this investment, but it came over time. We've now done close to 30 SPVs over the last 4.5 years. We now call it our benevolent model or benevolent formula. If we don't get our investors a double on their investment, we don't make a nickel. And even the idea behind that is we decided, look, everything that we're investing in, we're really looking for really outsized returns, 5 to 10x type return profiles. And we said, you know what, if we can't double the investor money, we really don't deserve to get paid. Now, when we standardize on this, one thing to point out though is anything above a double, our formulas, we take 30%, the investors get 70%. Again, that's the portion above the double. So we like to say, yes, we do really well, but only after the investors have done well. And so going back to Oura Ring, we ended up investing $8 million into the round. That was, I think it was their Series C round. And as a result, effectively own, 1% of the company is the really, really rough math. But the same dynamic with our investors was that these were people that really know and love Oura Ring and what a great product it is. And it's only gotten even better over the years. And, on paper, I think the company's up approximately a 5X. Again, it's still a private company and illiquid, but on paper, it's doing extremely well. But that really kicked off what I said is the benevolent portfolio and private equity and focus on these special purpose vehicles. And from there, it went into, we have the opportunity to invest in Athletic Brewing, the non-alcoholic craft beer company, which is doing extremely well. And then, we've got an investment into a sports drink called Barcode, and we're investing in a platform right now called Flyhouse that we're very excited about. It's effectively, essentially the Uber for private jets. You download an app, and within 90 seconds of putting in that you want to go from San Francisco to Aspen, Colorado, it serves you up the 10 lowest priced jet quotes in 5 different jet categories. And, we're really quite bullish on that one. And so that was really the I call it the amazing one-away moment, was being presented with the opportunity to invest in something that we already loved.
I love the trajectory and the launch pad that Aura created for you. I have 2 quick questions that are more service level before we dive in. You said your sleep score last night was a 94. What was your brother's?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if he sent it to me.
We can get real-time data on it.
Give me a second here. Nope, he didn't send me, but let me see if I have his one from the night before was 87. So not too bad, not too shabby, but not a night before.
Got it. And Flyhouse, do they charter or do they do jets from San Francisco to Chattanooga? I mean, that's the more question here.
Absolutely. That's the brilliance of this model is when they launched the app a little over a year ago, they were hoping to get 30 planes to sign up for it. And the way to think of it is almost like signing up your house for Airbnb. You own a house and you want to list it. So you list it on Airbnb, right? Completely free to do so. And just like Airbnb, they only get a percentage of the booking if it's actually booked, if it's rented. Otherwise, it's completely free to list your plane. So when they launched the app, they were hoping to get 30 planes to sign up the first day, and they got almost 300. Wow. And right now, as we're talking here, they have over 2,000 planes listed on the platform. And what does that mean? Well, the technology is that those planes, when you put in that you want to go from San Francisco Bay Area to Chattanooga, those planes that fit that criteria are effectively bidding for your business. And the planes in a reverse auction process with no human intervention are literally bidding, saying, oh, I'll do that trip for $8,000 an hour. No, I'll do that trip for $7,000 an hour. And at the end of 90 seconds, the 10 lowest priced bids, competitive bids, get served up to you, and completely free to get those quotes. You can cancel right away. Like, okay, I was just trying to see what the price would be. Or you have 30 minutes to actually put it, lock one down. So it's really disruptive, asset light model. Wow. Similar again to Airbnb. They don't own any of these jets, just like Airbnb doesn't own any of that real estate. Yeah. By the way, another really cool thing about the platform, Brian, is if you and a bunch of friends say, hey, you want to have a weekend in Vegas, or you want to go to the Masters, you're going to the NFL, one of the other features they have is something called Friend Share. So you could chop up the plane 8 ways, 10 ways, 12 ways, however many seats are available.
That seems like a great product. I mean, I was just, curious, but it seems like some cool investments that are quite interconnected. So I want to go back to this Aura Ring moment as well, right? Because you've done a lot of cool stuff since, but you're doing this now with your brother. When you did that first investment and you raised a single purpose vehicle, in the back of your head, to get any inkling that, hey, this might be a kind of our launch pad to everything in the future? Or was it just like, this sounds cool, let's kind of give it a whirl and see what happens? Like, what was the thought process going in?
Yeah, great question. It was more the latter, in the sense that we just, as the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. So we were presented with the opportunity to invest more into Aura Ring. And we thought, well, how are we going to go about that? Well, okay, we're going to have to establish, an LLC, limited liability company, exclusive to making this investment. And then we're going to have to create the subscription materials around it. So first and foremost, it was really about that one opportunity to invest in Aura Ring and the incredible response that it got. But then once we established that approach, then it became a little cookie cutter, in the sense that next one following was an opportunity to invest in Athletic Brewing. My brother and I, once again, positively obsessed with it. We stopped drinking many years ago. We view not drinking as one of our superpowers as twins, especially at this stage in our lives. And same thing we said to our extensive network. We say, hey, if you try Athletic Brewing and you're not like blown away by it, please pass. And again, we were wildly oversubscribed. We've actually made 3 investments into Athletic as a result. And then what I would tell you, Brian, is that whether it's Aura Ring, Athletic Brewing, or Flyhouse, the one that's focused right now, I describe our portfolio as the word of mouth and the fire in the belly portfolio. And what I mean by that is we want our investors to be the biggest fans and advocates of whatever they're investing. One is, hopefully, first and foremost, they love it as well. They use it. They tell people about it. And then, the fire in the belly, right, where they're just fired up about it. And there's a great quote. I actually have Morgan Housel from the Psychology of Money. He has an entire chapter that basically tells you, whatever you invest in, you better love it. And when I read that, I was like, that's the benevolent portfolio. You got to love what you're investing in, because it's going to challenge you at times. It's going to have those moments, and it's going to be that love that kind of helps get you through the tougher times.
Yeah. Almost like investing in a Southeastern football team, and it's like the love for what, it's a fun way to think about investing. Most people are just like, how can I get a return and velocitize my cash? And you're like, no, how do we love and scale?
Look, I am not a Bitcoin crypto person, but I have lots of friends who are. And the one thing about it is they love it, right? And they're passionate. And by the way, it's that love that hopefully enable them to hold on to it, especially when, when the price of Bitcoin was really getting hammered, and, that hold on for dear life dynamic.
Oh, or like this week, it's pretty down. So, hold your bets, for sure. No, I mean, I love the fire in the belly and, the kind of fan and advocate kind of model for the types of investments you're making. I also know, you said something about, okay, if we're going to make an investment, we're not going to take a nickel unless we grow at 5x plus or 2x plus. I'm sorry, but you'd like to get 10.
Yeah.
And I also know in your world and sphere, it's, how you create value and you drive value creation for like these investments when you're putting in larger check sizes. When you're investing in an Aura or an Athletic Brewing or a Flyhouse, kind of how do you think about coming in and not just saying, hey, here's cash, but like, we're going to help you scale this thing up in a way that's going to create value, not just for you guys as a team and company, but for, the investment and kind of shareholders that we put in bed with this investment?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I would say, first of all, that fire though, where we just want to be the biggest brand ambassadors and advocates of whatever we're investing in. So telling anybody and everybody, I mean, I can tell how often I am pointing to my Aura Ring when I'm meeting somebody on a plane and saying, oh, you got to get one of these, right? Like, so I'd say that's the first starting point, is where we hopefully help anything we're investing just by evangelizing and spreading the word as far and wide as possible. We don't, interesting enough, we do have we don't have a board seat on all of our investments, but where we do have board seats, interesting enough, I don't actually take the board seat myself. We oftentimes offer it to one of our investors that hopefully brings an enormous amount of strategic value to the company or to the portfolio investment. And the idea is like, I don't need to be on the board of our various investments to actually work any harder to try to help make it successful. So, in some ways, by getting one of our investors to take that seat, it creates a little bit of a multiplier effect, if that makes sense. So that's one of the ways that we approach when in those instances where we do get a board seat. Again, it's not always the case. And then otherwise, we always encourage any of the companies that we invest in to read the book called Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. And we view that book as truly one of the most valuable business books, bar none. And the idea, just like the title says, Who Not How, is don't come with us with this idea of, hey, how can we get into Costco with our product? We say, no, you need to ask, who do you know that can help us get into Costco as an example? And so that's why we know we've done a good job when we are on investor updates with various portfolio companies and they're quoting Who Not How, right? We kind of smile, we're like, okay, that's a good sign that they've now really adopted that approach. And that's what we try and offer to our various portfolio companies, if and as needed. Hey, tell us how we can help you with our extensive Rolodex, who we might help introduce you to that can help make the company more successful.
Love that. I like the approach. You're like, hey, we all need to kind of take grip on these investments. We'll bring in great people that help kind of shepherd it with their skills. And I think it's interesting. It sounds like, not only are you putting together these investment vehicles, but it sounds like you and your brother are good ringleaders of people and ralliers around interesting opportunities that kind of fit within the vein of what you like to invest.
Yeah, we're only as good as the unique opportunities that we curate and find. And then even along those lines, when we get an allocation into something, a specific dollar amount that we, truly a big part of what we do is we offer it to our extensive investor network, the crowd, so to speak. And, oftentimes we are oversubscribed on that opportunity as a result, right? Which is really what you want, is that it's not just us. I say if we were just sitting on discretionary capital, like a typical venture capital fund or private equity fund, I actually don't think that our potential returns might be as great, because we basically are trying to believe that we're smarter than the crowd, than the overall, marketplace of investors. So oftentimes what I say, for example, with Flyhouse, our original investment allocation was $10 million into the company. And now, because the response has been so incredibly strong, we've had to go back to the founder and say, would you let us go to 15 million? Yes. Would you let us go to 20 million? Yes. And now we've landed at 25 million. So a perfect example of like, hey, don't take our word for it. Like, when people really do their research and dig into this disruptive platform, and now they have over 2,000 planes and they're, generating significant bookings, all that great stuff, like the response kind of feeds on itself positively, right? It's snowballing, but it's led by the extensive network, not by us.
Totally. And it sounds like too, when you make investments, not just for the investors you invest in, but given kind of the reputation and Rolodex, you can also help kind of drive demand and awareness for what you're investing in, just given it sounds like more kind of consumer led in a way, kind of businesses that have rapid expansion opportunities.
That is such a great point, because when we first approached the founder of Flyhouse, who's also a fellow YPO member, that's how we know him. We go back 20 years through our association with YPO. At first he turned us down. He said, no, I'm really not sure I'm going to bring in, additional outside capital. And then I said to him, look, let me explain how the benevolent model works. You deal with one investor, me, Grant Johnson. I deal with, depending 85 investors. And then he thought about it and he said, well, wait a second. Also, those potential investors are potential, customers of the platform. And that's been exactly the case. Like, the people that really love Flyhouse are the ones that fly private, maybe they have a membership with NetJets or FlexJets or, any of those there. They have a fractional jet card, or just every once in a while they go in on a private plane together. So yes, that's been exactly the case.
I mean, now imagine coming on a Flyhouse jet experience. You're delivered a athletic brewing drink. What ordering? I mean, this
Exactly. As you're catching some sleep on your way to Paris, right?
this is built-in skill for benevolent. I like it.
It is all interconnected for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Hey, I'm bullish on this model already. It's good. So, Grant, I'm curious from a sourcing perspective, right, versus finding opportunities for deal allocation and then actually driving value for the portfolio companies. How do you think about spending time and kind of what comes first, or how are things prioritized?
Thank you again for that great question. First things first is if it's not something that resonates with me from the context and perspective of, do I love this? Am I really excited about this? Am I passionate about it? As I like to say, it's a really easy pass. So in any given day, I probably get 3 to 5 deals sent to me. Like if I really track like how many deals are just being sent to me on a daily basis, it's easily, about that many. But then if you look, we only do a handful of deals a year. Let's call it 2 to 4. So one every 3 to 6 months, have to be particularly focused on, what gets me excited and fired up. And then from there, it's, as I mentioned you with the founder of Flyhouse, where I'm negotiating, hey, we love this. We'd love to invest. Can we get an allocation? And, he turned me down at first and, then he said, okay, yes. And then we got that initial amount. So it is a back and forth collaborative process, but also because, we're not just a captive discretionary fund like, a Sequoia or an AKR where we just write the check. Oh, here you go. Here's $10 million. We're only as good as that unique opportunity. And then we have to take it out to the crowd, to our network, and hopefully they respond favorably to it. So that is one of the areas where there's a little bit more time involved with working with Benevolent. But at the end of the day, you may end up getting, as I described, dozens of investors that all come through one investment, right? So they love it as well.
Nice. Okay. It's super helpful to kind of understand how you think about kind of the investments and kind of where you find things. But I have to imagine, just given the orbits that you circulate in, like certain things come to your kind of horizon quickly and in a trusted way, which I'm sure helps.
Yeah, Dan, mostly through the network, the crowd, in investors that know us, know what we're looking for. Absolutely. That's the best starting point.
No, I know what you're looking for. Yeah. I'm trying to create this plane experience to make it better for everyone, so it's good. So, I mean, look, Grant, I love your positivity and like your energy. I mean, it's contagious. I'm sure you've heard this before. However, I'm sure things haven't, they're on this journey. Things have surprised you, things haven't kind of maybe gone your way. I'm just curious, as someone who, is fascinated with this kind of mid-market investing, but space that seems maybe a little more stable than a venture investment at an early stage. Like, what's a time that it just, if you don't mind sharing, but it hasn't gone right, and maybe the lessons that kind of you walked away with that you'll apply to every other future investment, if you can and willing to share.
Yeah, I am. I will tell you, we had an investment in an EV motorcycle company. And, at the time that we made the investment, EV was as hot as it gets. But that one has unfortunately been a disaster and hasn't worked out, certainly versus the promise and the potential of it. And, of course, hindsight's 2020. And looking back on it, kind of one of the things I realized is, like, as I described to you, that fire in the belly portfolio, honestly, I really don't have the fire in the belly about EV. So I think there's a lot of hypocrisy regarding EV, where the resources and the batteries come from and the difficulty, recycling them. And, there's also the issue where you plug it into the grid and, so I think that that's one element that I've always struggled with. But then secondly, quite honestly, I don't ride a motorcycle. So it's not an area that I'm passionate about. Like, one of the kind of, my cardinal rules that I now, I think, live by is it has to be something that I'm going to personally use. And that one wasn't there. So I'd like to say that the lesson learned is I wouldn't make that type of investment again. And it's only a bad lesson or experience if you don't learn from it. So I guess to help answer your question, I feel like I've learned from that one in a great way, a great deal. But that is definitely one that did not work out.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it makes sense given how you've described the other investments, like your voice inflection, right? Just like for energetically, it's so different.
Yeah.
You're a passionate user yourself. You want to tell people, the EV, the potential maybe on paper looked big. But at the end of the day, like, it wasn't something that you could get behind yourself. So it sounds like a good kind of pulse check as well. Very interesting. Let's say, let's imagine a dream state. Let's say a scenario came on your desk tomorrow morning, like out of the blue. Like like if you could imagine a company that was incubated, was successful, something that like you love to use or a hobby that you have that like you is big consumer scale, like what would that be if you could wave a magic wand?
Great question. Usually it starts with that personal element to it. Also hopefully maybe something that resonates positive, like that it's healthy for you. Like Oura Ring, right? I do believe that it's a life-changing device. I think that everybody needs better and higher quality sleep if you really do this, do the studies on it. But also similar athletic brewing. Let's be honest, there's a massive trend away from alcohol. That's an enormous positive, one that we embraced long before, as I mentioned. So I would say that, to that point of like when it hits my inbox or somebody tells me about it, it has to have that like, oh, wow, I care about this, right? I care about health, wellness, longevity. I've got young daughters, so I want to be as healthy as possible as the years go by. So that's partly my motivating factor. But as described, like, do I fly private now? No. Do I look forward to flying private when possible? Yes. And the way I look at it is the best way to do that is through Flyhouse, right? Whether it's through that friend share or, their disruptive pricing where they're figuring out to deliver you the lowest price jet to rent or charter as opposed to the competition or trying to figure out how to charge you more. So I hope that answered your question. Basically, that first thing, Malcolm Gladwell's, is it Blink? I think it's Blink, where you can just tell like within oh, wow, like, ooh, this is really interesting.
Yeah, that's how I feel about this conversation. It's a good gut check. It's very positive. So, do it again.
I will tell you, I get some people send me like AI stuff all the time. And we have an AI investment. It's doing extremely well. Interesting enough, we made the investment before AI was even a thing. It was this investment is over 3 years old. But I can't tell you, like, with a lot of the AI stuff I see, I get it, but it's not hitting that, oh my God, this is the greatest thing. It's the be all end all. I love it so much. So I'm probably more cautious on that space as a result than, the overall world.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure like Aura is using some elements of.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Like you're investing in things that consumers at scale can kind of use and will always have a need for. So on that note, so appreciate you answering that question, but maybe help me understand like you and your brother, like what are things maybe that, beyond the investments you've made, like what are the things that you guys just like care about, love to do, think about, talk about, philosophize about, like what, like help kind of.
So it's funny, we are identical twins, but as we described, I am so much like our father and he is so much like our mom. And our mom was a former U.S. ambassador, so she's very diplomatic. She gets along with everybody, and that is Brett. I mean, we went to all the same schools together, but Brett had, friends with everybody. Whereas I joke and describe, I have like a handful of really close friends, but because I'm Brett's identical brother, it's like I get the benefit of all of his friendships. Our father was, still alive. He's retired, but he was an amazing salesman. And I think I do possess those qualities as far as raising capital for something that I really love. And so that's where I think it's kind of in my DNA. I just remember growing up as kids, just sitting in my dad's office, listening to him on the phone. And I think that that's something that, just kind of soaked in, so to speak. And that's why my brother and I think we do work so well together, is actually because of the fact that we're quite different from one another. And, as well, you can see that sports stadium in my background. Brett runs our professional sports portfolio and our real estate, that stadium. I joke, I free him up to do the really fun and cool stuff like own soccer clubs. But that is an area that Brett has always been so passionate about, is soccer and sports. Like, I joke, he's one of those weird guys that would set his alarm for, 2 a.m. to go watch USA versus Japan. But that was a sign of how passionate he is about the overall, sports space. Whereas I would be much more like, tell me how the game was in the morning.
Got it. Okay. I'm starting to understand the delineation of if he was here, how this interview would go on you. But, it also reminds me when you talked about hearing your, you said dad, right? He's like adopting and maybe just soaking in some of those lessons and just hearing what he said and how you kind of maybe emulate that when you're raising capital for things you believe in, and how invaluable. Your mom sounds like a total winner as well. So
yeah, she was a force. So she was the U.S. ambassador to Jamaica, which was super cool.
Oh, wow. Very cool. And where did you guys grow up?
So we like to say the mean streets of the Upper East Side, New York City. Literally 72nd and Madison is where we grew up. We went to a small all-boys private school there. This was back in the late 70s, early 80s. And the city was a very different place back then. Interesting enough, the majority of the kids that we went to school with went off to boarding school, because that's just what you did during that period in New York, is if you could afford to send your kids away, you did. And so we ended up going to a boarding school in Connecticut called Choate, which we loved. It's actually where I got introduced to the sport of rowing, which was a very important part of my life. And part of the reason why we ended up at Brown University is I got recruited to row at Brown. And Brett wasn't a rower at that time, but I persuaded him to row freshman year at Brown. And I joke that he's never forgiven me for it.
That's awesome. It's funny. I if I could go back to college, knowing what I know now, I would go to a Brown. I think it's a fascinating the way to think about the education. So, anyways, I'm sure that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, what I would tell you is Brown as a university is arguably the most entrepreneurial, or one of the most entrepreneurial, because you literally can choose your own major, you can create a major, you can take everything pass fail. I mean, I remember I was deciding at the time between Duke University, where our mom went, and Brown. And Duke sent like this long list of requirements. And I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, I can't do that. And Brown was like, take anything you want. So it was a fairly easy decision.
Yeah, I remember reading Adam Braun's book, The Promise of the Pencil, or Pencils of Promise. And I was like, where do you go to school? And I was like, I did this whole deep dive on Brown. And I was like, what a fascinating way to have a college education. So,
well, same thing. When you learn about anybody that went to Brown, and I've yet to meet anybody, they love it. Right? It doesn't matter who they are, where they're from, what their background is, how old. The one unifying principle is absolutely everybody loves it.
Yeah. Well, one day, maybe I'll go visit sometime. But thanks for sharing your experience and cool on rowing. And yeah, I'm totally understanding this. How you get people, mobilize people. It seems like, well, even your brother at rowing. I want to understand. What were you doing pre-benevolent? Like, was investing in the mid-market and then kind of doing private equity ever on the radar? Like, what was your life like prior to this journey?
So coming out of Brown in 92, fall of 92, again, long time ago. But we both ended up out in San Francisco. And at the time, Brett had a job with a private equity firm, and I didn't have a job. I was literally, living on his couch, but I got an interview at a renowned investment banking firm called Montgomery Securities that was in the Transamerica Pyramid. And I got hired into this legendary program they had called the Sherpa program. And the idea of the Sherpa is like Mount Everest. You're helping the senior brokers, you're helping them sell the securities to big institutional clients, and you're not getting really much of the credit, right? Like a true Sherpa. But if you do well in that program, that very intensive training program, you have the chance to become a senior member of the firm. And so I was really fortunate, again, who, not how. I was at the time the first non-MBA hired into that Sherpa program. And it was really because the head guy just liked me a lot. And had that connection that I made with him. So he really made it happen. He kind of overruled their own committee, saying like, hey, you might not have an MBA, but this guy, he's got a good head on his shoulders. We think he, and truly a big part of that is being able to sell, because we were selling IPOs to mutual funds, hedge funds, endowments. Those were our clients, at least on the institutional equity sales desk that I was hired into. So it was really just, right place, right time, and lucky. And I did extremely well there. So I was basically there for 7 years. And during that stretch, we took, as a firm, more companies public than anybody on Wall Street by actual number of deals. So the number of companies that Montgomery Securities took public was greater than everybody else on Wall Street. And these were a who's who of fast-growing companies. So that was my baptism by fire, so to speak, in, looking at companies and deciding, which ones are hopefully have more ability to grow and to scale, and everything from, Papa John's Pizza back in the day, or Netscape back in the, as prime examples of companies that we helped to take public. They had this crazy amount of growth. So that was the foundational background of really understanding what distinguishes a fast-growing, call it sexy company, like an Aura Ring or like an Athletic Brewing.
Got it. So what I'm hearing you say is you saw firsthand kind of the backbone, the financials, the kind of these companies, at a tipping point of acquisition or at a tipping point of like true selling, right? And could really understand in a deep way kind of what made that possible. Is that?
Yeah, I remember a moment actually where, again, I was in the training program, the Sherpa program, and one of the two senior people I worked for, there was an actual moment where the company Sunglass Hut, which we helped take public, was one of the fastest growing companies at the time. They announced that they were getting into the watch business. And I thought, in a naive, I was like, oh, wow, that's so cool. And the senior person, she turned to me and she's like, no, it's horrible. It's a sign that their core business is having growth issues if they are pivoting into watches. And she was spot on. And the stock was down, big that day, right? And it was a great lesson to me. Like, I, again, thought like, oh, this is so smart of them. She's like, no, it's not. It's a really bad sign.
Interesting. Got it. So yeah, sounds like some great lessons firsthand. Were there any other companies or lessons like Sunglass Hut that stand out to this day when company, pivoting from your core, or other kind of crazy stories that you remember from that time?
There were so many. Part of it is I was working on the institutional equity desk. So I'm literally calling on hedge funds and pension plans and endowments. And, these are major buyers of stocks. And part of it is going to the point of knowing who you're selling to is, they all have different criteria that they're looking for. And it's not a one size fits all. Like if you're going to tell somebody about, investing into Microsoft, it's just an example, Home Depot, or, Oracle or Netscape, you kind of have to know that fits into their, are they a growth investor or value investor? Do they have to have earnings, things like that. So I don't know. I have lots of great stories about, being very careful about what you're pitching and why and to whom, and really understanding what they're looking for. You can't look at it from your shoes. Like, oh, I got to sell this. You have to look at it from their shoes. What do they need to buy? What are they looking to buy?
Interesting. So, it really sounds like you take deep understanding, and maybe what that period taught you is not just, obviously who you're selling to, but like really what they care about and kind of the things in which they like to invest in. And it sounds like a lesson for life,
Well, and it takes us to today, where I say to our potential investors with regards to fly houses as an example, or, hey, if you don't love it, like, please pass. Like, don't invest just because you think it's going to be a great return. Please invest because you love it and you think it's going to be a great return, right? So that's that same dynamic is like that it really has to be something that makes sense for them, that resonates with them, not because we think you're going to do really well.
Totally makes sense. So like back to, and I appreciate you kind of sharing that. And maybe if we go back to even these investments, which, you can hear just the excitement in your voice. When you think about your kind of strategy to hold the investment, sell, drive return on capital, like how do you think, like, how do you know when to do that? How do you know the right time, who to sell it to? Like, what's that process like? I mean, there's the upfront investing part, and then there's the back end process where everyone wins. Like, but how do you know when it's a good time, and how do you?
Yeah, I mean, one area that we probably have the least amount of control over, right? We make the investment.
Sure.
Or a Ring as an example, Athletic Brewing as an example, and even Flyhouse. But we can help in whatever ways possible if described to the degree or extent that they're even looking for our help. It's like, hey, we'll evangelize. But the ultimate exit, which is really only when we might see a return, has to be either they get bought or they go public. So, for example, I think there's a really good chance that Oura Ring could go public. I think it would be really well received as a publicly traded company because of the fan base and the just the users alone that might want to own the stock. But I also feel that a more likely acquirer of Oura Ring is some massive company like Google that bought Fitbit as an example, or Amazon, because you can use the Ring, for Amazon Health or whatever the case may be, or I think Apple, because it integrates well with the Apple Watch. So any one of those could be a potential buyer of Oura when all is said and done. So I kind of feel like that's what we're going to see. And I believe I have this vision, like I'm going to wake up one of these mornings and just look at my Wall Street Journal homepage and see the big announcement. But unless until that happens, we actually have really limited control over the exits.
Very cool. Yeah, as you were talking about potential outcomes for Oura, I was thinking the Google, Amazon, Apple scenarios. So very cool. Grant, what's something that myself or maybe your close YPO friends, like, well, what's something that like they wouldn't know about you unless like you really ask? Like, well, what's something that is unexpected about Grant?
That's funny. I'm laughing because actually, when you do get to know me, what you'll learn is I'm one of the most avid film watchers. Like I like to say, I watch more films than about anybody you'll meet. And it's my escape. So at the end of the evening when, my wife and daughters are asleep, I'm watching something on my iPad. That's kind of how I decompress. And I like to say, like, if it can just distract me and get my mind off things, I enjoy it. So I'm pretty forgiving when it comes to content, but like my hobby is just, and my escapism is watching movies and TV shows.
Nice. What, any particular types of movies or genres of movies or just anything?
I skew dark. I mean, like Peaky Blinders, is one of my favorite shows. Breaking Bad is one of my favorite shows. But at the same time, I'm also, as I described, like as long as I can be entertained, I'm pretty happy.
Nice. I've heard Severance is a pretty good show. That
I haven't. It's in my watch list. The ratings are insane. I think like I do take a look at IMDb scores, Internet Movie Database, and I think it's close to a 9 out of 10, which is somewhat unheard of.
Yeah. I'm always the person at the like Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner table and everyone's talking about shows. And I'm like, what show? So, I could probably learn a thing or two about content consumption, but it seems like you're on top of it. And
again, it's just
healthy distraction.
Yes, that's right. And I oftentimes do have friends of mine that do know me, to your question, like if you really knew me, that are asking me like, hey, what's a good show to watch right now? I usually have a handful of recommendations.
Yeah, well, you recommended a book. I might be asking you for shows next. So this is helpful. Grant, you mentioned that you have $2. Is that right?
I have 2 daughters. I have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old. Yeah. So, yeah, 2 daughters.
What, you've clearly, it seems like lived a, big life in some ways. You've seen a lot of things, living in a beautiful area. When you think about being a father and raising a family and being a father, keep representing for your daughters, who's the type of, what's the kind of father that you want to be, when it's all said and done?
Great question. It's certainly, I think of my own father, and like I said, I really feel blessed to have had one of the most amazing fathers possible, and an incredible role model to me as a father, especially of young daughters, and really just ideally inspire them to kind of be whatever they want to be. And I know it sounds cliche, but one of my favorite quotes is from Maslow, I think Abraham Maslow, and the quote is, "What one can be, one must be." And I just love that idea, like, sort of this living up to one's potential. And I think it was also Maslow that said, the definition of hell is to be on your deathbed and meet the person you could have been, right? So those quotes are really connected to each other. Like, you're on your deathbed and all of a sudden you meet the person that, that you could have lived up to, but you didn't. And so when I think about raising my daughters, I want them hopefully to be, inspired and motivated and led by example, right? Is that they see dad doing what he loves and doing it with people that he loves. Because I also view that life's too short not to be happy.
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful. I love that quote. There's this Salvador Dali painting that's my favorite. I like art, but like, it's probably the only painting I know by name. And it's this person ripping open the world. It's like this perpetual state of becoming of what you can be. And I just spoke about the print, but like, whoa, that quote seems very aligned or parallel. Maybe I should get the quote too, but no, it's beautiful. And I think it's an awesome representation, right? For young, I think especially women growing up, just given the way society is sometimes, like being that example and shepherd of their talent and greatness, which you are for companies in similar ways. So.
Yeah, and thank you. And look, follow your bliss, follow your happiness. As you could hear, as you've commented on just the things that fire me up, right? That's a big part of it. It's like, gets me up. I like to say that fire in the belly, it gets me up and it keeps me up, but in good ways. By the way, again, this Morgan Housel, The Psychology of Money, I have this quote I'm going to read to you. Use money to gain control over your time, because not having control of your time is such a powerful and universal drag on happiness. The ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want to, pays the highest dividend that exists in finance. So that's literally on my wall in front of my computer screen. And that's how I feel about it. It's like, hey, if it doesn't make you happy, and that's why going back to that EV motorcycle company, looking back on it, it's like, now I shake my head and like, geez, it didn't really make me happy. It didn't fire me up, so hopefully, that mistake will not get made in the future.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see this quote wall that you're looking at, because it seems like it's very inspiring. So
that is exactly why it's there, is a reminder.
Good. All right. Grant, I know we're closing on the last 5-10 minutes here. We covered lots of ground here. Let's talk a little bit about the future of benevolent. It seems like you've made some really smart and thoughtful investments that you really care about, you're excited about. I know you have kinds of investments you want to make in the future, but kind of what do you see over the next 5 to 10 years of benevolent, and where it's going, or your kind of big, hairy, audacious goals for where you'd like to take it?
Thank you. Another great question. I think using this fly house as an example, how we've gone from a $10 million original investment allocation to now $25 million. At $10 million, it would have been the largest single investment we made after Oro. Oro was 8. And now at 25, it's, multiples of that. And so what I actually am leaning in towards is fewer deals per year, but much larger sizing. And when you think about it, the nature of our focus is it's so specialized and curated, and you have to work just as hard and long on the small deals, maybe even harder than you do on the big deals. I'm kind of looking at it as like, I'd rather lean in on the bigger deals. So I see doing more, 10, 15, $20 million type investment sizes rather than, 5 deals at about $3 million a piece.
Right.
Situation.
Yeah. And but it also sounds like too, like you're earning your stripes or track record to be able to maybe even do that. Right. And kind of move up the mountain a little bit. So that's very cool as well. Right. And totally understand the small fish, big fish energy and all that, just on a much smaller scale, but I get it. So that's very cool that, you probably even more upside on those deals as well. So
yeah, it's interesting. One of the best books from about 30 years ago was called Blueprint to a Billion. And what the author analyzed is all the publicly traded companies that have achieved $1 billion in revenues. And back in the day, it wasn't as many as you would imagine. $1 billion in revenues is a really big achievement. Maybe not so much today, but 30 years ago it was. And these are companies like Microsoft, Home Depot, Lowe's, Oracle, big publicly traded companies typically that can achieve that. But the interesting thing is he analyzed those companies and they all had 7 traits in common. One of which was where your customers are your best sales force, right? Your customers are telling people about your product. Like, hey, you got to get the Apple iPhone. You got to get the Oura Ring. Another one is that you have to have a big brother alliance. So back in the day, it was Microsoft got IBM as a big brother alliance, as an example. But that book, Blueprint to a Billion, is really powerful for anybody that's starting a company with this idea of like, hey, you should be thinking about, can you get to $1 billion in revenues? And if you can't, is it a big enough market? Is it?
Yeah. Interesting. I love what you're saying. I think it's been my biggest insight over the last 6 months or 12 months. It's like, if you think about like how do you start a business, I think most entrepreneurs just start because they're so excited about starting and the idea, but they don't really look at the business model or reverse engineer what it could be from the start because they're excited and bullish on something. And again, it's easier to say in hindsight, but I think some very smart entrepreneurs give a lot of thought to the business model and in the market on the front end and, start there. They probably save themselves a lot of pain along the way. So, sounds like another good book. I still need to finish 10X is greater than 2X, but maybe that'll be my next book as well. So you are the guy for
just the summary of the book. It'd be valuable to look at what those criteria are that all these big, $1 billion revenue companies have in common.
Well, no, it's exciting. It's neat that it sounds like you're investing as well with that kind of mindset.
I think to your question about where I'm focused now in these bigger investment opportunities and I liked your analogy of going up the mountain, is I need to focus more on those types of companies that do have, look, Flyhouse does what I think it's going to do in the years to come as a disruptive, Uber for private jets. It will achieve $1 billion in revenues. Like $1 billion in revenues would actually be on the low side. You're a platform like that.
Long Grant, you've been a joy to meet, talk to, get to know, interview. So thank you for your time. Where can people find Benevolent, find you?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, of course, probably one of the best ways to check out our portfolio and, our website, benevolentcapital.com. And I try to be responsive, especially if someone sends me a thoughtful outreach. I kind of think the golden rule, I'd like somebody to respond to me, especially if it's somewhere where I can be helpful or valuable.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, thanks for being helpful to being on the show. Hopefully it's helpful to you and your audience as well. So looking forward to following along.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the One Away Show with Grant Johnson. What I'll carry with me from this conversation is Grant's sense of intentionality, his ability to step back, reflect, and make decisions, not just with ambition, but with alignment. Whether in media, investing, or family life, he leads with consistency and character. This episode is a reminder that success isn't just about outcomes, it's about who you become through the process. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe. We are back every Tuesday and Friday with more journeys of transformation. Until next time, follow the quiet instincts that guide you to something better.